In Gaza. Now, just before this demonstration, Ben Jamal, who's the head of the Palestine Solidarity Campaign, said it's a clear duty of the UK government to end its complicity in Israel's genocide. He says that the UK should suspend export licenses for arms supplies to Israel and then have the resumption of funding to UNRWA that can prevent a famine taking hold in Gaza.
Students activist is in a critical condition in hospital more than a month into a hunger strike. She was arrested in February on charges of harassing the royal family's motorcade. Human rights advocates say the case demonstrates how laws are being used to suppress freedom of expression. Jessica Washington reports.
In Bangkok's Temasek Hospital, a mother weeps for her 22-year-old daughter, who is gaunt and pale. Tantawan Tuaturaman, known as Tawan, and her colleague Nathanon have been on a hunger strike since they were remanded in custody in mid-February on charges of sedition. Tawan's lawyer says she is weak and feverish but will not accept medical treatment.
She's not my first client who did this, and I'm sure she's not going to be the last one. And I think that all the reasons are very similar. It's just about normal justice.
The sedition charges relate to an incident in early February when the pair repeatedly sounded their car horn as a royal motorcade carrying Thailand's Princess Mahachakri Serinthorn was passing. They also argued with an officer when they were stopped and later said they did not realize it was the royal motorcade. A lawyer for Tawan, a law student and activist campaigning for reform of the monarchy, says the offence should be considered a misdemeanor. The Prime Minister's office said after the incident that such actions set a bad example for others and young people must respect traditions. Later that month, Tawan organised a public survey asking people what they thought about royal motorcades. Violence broke out when royalist supporters confronted activists conducting the poll. Tawan was already facing charges for insulting royals after she discussed the royal motorcade case. Human rights organizations say nearly 2,000 people in Thailand have been prosecuted since 2020 over exercising their right to freedom of expression and peaceful assembly.
Human Rights Watch, we have not seen significant improvement regarding respect for fundamental freedoms, freedom of expression, freedom of assembly. People are still being prosecuted. People are being sent to jail and denied their bail. And we have Thai people fleeing the country.
Rights groups say Thai authorities use broad and vague articles in the criminal code related to security to prosecute activists, and this case should not be considered sedition. Tawan has said she will not stop her hunger strike until her voice is heard and Thailand's justice system is reformed. Jessica Washington, Al Jazeera.
Police in Peru have raided the home of President Dina Boluarte looking for what they describe as undeclared luxury watches. Around 40 officers broke into the residence using a sledgehammer. The police say they were searching for Rolex watches. Government agents launched an investigation following a newspaper report about Boluarte wearing a range of luxury watches that had not been disclosed publicly. Drug trafficking has been on the rise among young Iraqis in recent years. A shortage of substance addiction rehabilitation centers has prompted some hospitals to launch their own recovery programs. Mahmoud Abdul Wahed reports from Baghdad.
Daily workouts are part of the rehabilitation process for these young men recovering from drug addiction. At this hospital in Baghdad, exercise and counseling go hand in hand with detoxing. 23-year-old Bakr describes the program as a journey of resurrection.
I started smoking crystal meth in 2017. It destroyed my life, left me penniless and turned me into a hostile person, fighting with my family every day to give me money to buy it. It used to keep me awake for 10 to 12 days.
Patients from the southern and eastern regions of Iraq are usually methamphetamine users, addicted to the stimulant that speeds up the body's nervous system, causing a high. Those from the western and northern regions tend to be users of Captagon pills, which have a similar effect.
In this hospital alone, we receive between 60 and 70 cases every day. Hostile behavior and isolation are common. Meth addicts usually experience loss of teeth, brain and nervous system dysfunction, and heart and kidney failure.
Poverty and unemployment are major factors. Doctors here say 3,600 drug addicts have been treated at this hospital since the beginning of the year. About 90% are crystal meth addicts. The drug used to be smuggled into Iraq along with other narcotics, but is now reported to be manufactured locally. According to the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime, crystal meth is considered the most dangerous and widespread drug in Iraq. The Interior Ministry says at least 9.5 tons of narcotics have been confiscated this year. The World Drug Report shows drug trafficking in and through Iraq has been increasing steadily since 2003. Some networks reportedly have links to political parties and armed groups.
We've disbanded dozens of drug trafficking networks, including cross-border networks, and apprehended more than 1,400 suspects since January. Some of them have been sentenced to death or life in prison. There are also suspects working from abroad.
Some of these patients turned themselves in voluntarily to seek treatment. Others were brought here by their families. Doctors say they're only a fraction of the number of drug addicts in Iraq. Many more, fearing social stigma, isolate themselves from friends and family and often die alone. Mahmoud Abdul Wahid, Al Jazeera, Baghdad.
In southern Africa, drought is threatening food shortages for millions. The region has suffered its lowest rainfall in more than 40 years. It's feeling price increases and damaging livelihoods. Here's a South African farmer explaining the difficulties that he's facing in his own words.
My name is Peter Mtebu. I am a crop farmer from Free State Province, South Africa. I've been farming for 14 years. Before drought, everything looked good. There was enough moisture on the soil, but here we are now. Things has just changed. I've never seen this kind of drought with the heat wave. We are going to harvest nothing, and I mean nothing. In the past couple of years, it was between 3 ton and 5 ton in my area per hectare on maize. But this year we are going to harvest nothing. This drought has affected me financially. I have employees. I need to maintain the farm. I need to maintain the machinery, and I must expand as well. But with these conditions, it's going to be a big problem. We were warned by expert agronomists about the coming El Nino, but we never expected this kind of damage. I have experienced this El Nino before, but it was not of this magnitude. Yeah, ordinary people will be impacted by this drought. So ordinary people, they will be affected. They will pay more money to buy food because of this drought.
Christians around the world have been marking the Easter weekend in different ways. In Haiti, people are trying to keep their traditions alive, even though gang violence is getting worse. Children and adults are still making and trading colourful paper kites, as they've done every Easter weekend. Armed gangs control much of the capital, Port-au-Prince. Interim Prime Minister has resigned after he was blocked from returning from a foreign trip. Venezuelans have reenacted the crucifixion of Jesus Christ to mark Good Friday in one of Caracas' poorest neighborhoods. The tradition began in 1986. More than 90% of the country's population is Catholic. Meanwhile, the leader of the Roman Catholic Church has missed the traditional Good Friday procession in Rome. The Vatican says 87-year-old Pope Francis is saving his energy for other events. He's expected to preside over a vigil on Saturday and a Mass to mark Easter Sunday. Up Front is up next on Al Jazeera. Elizabeth is going to be here in a few minutes with more on all these stories in about half an hour. I'm Rob Matheson. Stay with us on Al Jazeera.
Gaza, content creators have become journalists, rescuers, heroes, and targets. And yet, they continue to report. This is the story of just one of them. For the love of Gaza on Al Jazeera.
As the United States is under fire for its continued support of Israel's brutal war on Gaza, and while it becomes further enmeshed in a costly war in Ukraine, many are asking, how is this affecting Washington's global standing? Is the U.S. overstretched? And could this signal the end of U.S. unipolarity? We'll ask renowned political scientist John Mearsheimer in an Upfront special. John Mearsheimer, thank you so much for joining us on Upfront.
My pleasure to be here.
It's been nearly 20 years since you co-authored your seminal piece titled The Israel Lobby, dealing with the lobby's undue influence on United States foreign policy. Have there been any major policy shifts or any other changes or developments since you wrote the piece?
Well, I think two things have changed. One is I think that we helped to open up the discourse about the lobby. Before we wrote the article and